When anyone looks at ancient Tamaray, or Kemet, which is now being called Egypt by foreign invaders, it's very hard not to notice the superb construction of enormous, beautiful pyramids, temples, and the huge statues of African people. It still amazes me that some people, because of their hatred and racism, will never acknowledge that this was done by Africans. Furthermore, the purpose of this video is not to prove that the African structures in Africa were in fact constructed by themselves, because that is already evident. In this video, I want to shed light on a misunderstood concept amongst some people that is not very clear, and that is, were the statues of the ancient Tamarian deities mere principles only? Accept it or not, some people actually look at the statues of these great people, and for some strange reason, they have this ill-informed notion that these deities did not really exist, and that they are only principles, and this is far from the truth. Welcome to Back to the Basics, where you learn facts, hope you embrace it. Watch, like, share, bring in awareness. Watch, like, share, bring in awareness. I'm fearless. Welcome to Back to the Basics, where you learn facts, hope you embrace it. Watch, like, share, bring in awareness. Watch, like, share, bring in. Take a moment and ask yourself, who builds a temple for a principle? Better yet, who builds a tomb for a principle? What, the principle got old and died and our ancestors felt the need to encase it in a tomb? I know that sounds weird, because it is. Tombs were built in ancient Tamaray for human deities who existed in flesh and blood, like Asar or Osiris, who was the mate of Ashtat or Isis, who gave birth to the falcon deity Har or Horus, who most people worship today as Jesus, Isa, or Yahshua. From this name Horus, we get the word horoscope, Horus rising, or horizon. So by virtue of the fact that Osiris' tomb was uncovered by tomb raiders that we so elegantly call archaeologists today, he must have existed. And if the father existed, then by this reason, we can conclude that the wife existed, and thus their son must have existed. The problem that most people face today is the information that they rely on and put so much trust in comes only from those people who have been lying about history for ages. The truth is, there was a pre-dynastic time in Egyptian history that was purposely kept hidden from the masses. During the pre-dynastic times, there were many pharaohs who predated the so-called first pharaoh, Menes, also known as Namer. Because of this reality, most people do not have the sacred records of the rulership of ancient deities like Re, Shu, Geb, Osiris, Thoth, and many others who ruled before Namer. Today, archaeologists base their assumption of Egyptian rulership on the writings of an Egyptian historian named Manetho. Manetho was a devout high priest of On, born in Sebennytos, ancient Deb Nitir, which is now Samanud in the Delta. He served under Ptolemy II, Philadelphus, 285 to 246 BC. And for this reason, you will find that the king's list of pharaohs was recorded in the Greek language. No complete copies of Manetho's work were ever found, yet many historians such as Josephus Flavius, Eusebius Pamphili, Sextus Julius Africanus, and George Syncellus has distorted Manetho's list, giving you the modern list we have today, beginning with Namer. However, according to Manetho, in the beginning, 7 deities ruled Egypt for 12,300 years. Ptah ruled for 9,000 years. Re ruled for 1,000 years. Shu ruled for 700 years. Geb ruled for 500 years. Osiris for 450 years. Set for 350 years. And Horus for 300 years. The second dynasty of deities included Thoth, Maat, and 10 others who ruled for 1,570 years. The third dynasty consisted of 30 demi-deities who reigned for 3,650 years. The fourth dynasty, which lasted for 350 years, was a period of chaos, for Egypt became disunited and had no ruler. And eventually it ended with the reunification under the pharaoh Menes on Namer. When we examine the main deposits in Nekhem, where the Namer palette was found, which is a place directly associated with an apparent proto-dynastic level, this would date it a generation or two before the unification of Egypt in 3100 BC. So we can now conclude that 3100 BC is in fact wrong. Other sources such as the Table of Abydos, an inscription on the walls of the Temple of Seti I, and of Ramses II at Abydos in Upper Egypt. The Table of Saqqara found in the tomb of a scribe named Thunnery at Saqqara, and the Tauran Canon of Kings, a papyrus heretic script dating back to the reign of Ramses II. It It begins the history of Egyptians with deities and demi-deities, and then after, it gives a long list of pharaohs' names beginning with Menes. And lastly, the Polymer Stone, which also lists pharaohs before Menes. Archaeologists and Egyptologists have maliciously chosen to ignore our ancient descendants as rulers of Egypt, and the same thing happened with the deities ruling in ancient Sumer. This is the kind of information that is kept from the public, and they will never teach it to you. Instead, they say things like they were mythological, and yet they still show the later mixed Egyptian and Greek pharaohs that came from the same line of descendancy. Now, why did our ancient ancestors build these statues of themselves? Well, in order to know what a thing is for, it is important to know what it is not for. The statues of our ancestors were not built for us to adore, admire, prostrate before, or worship. They knew that it was necessary to leave behind a record of their existence to be remembered in space and time for the benefit of us, their descendants. For records kept on papyrus can only last but so long, and records carved in stone will last for ages before nature takes a toll on it. Their images, including their names, were principles for us as their children to understand ourselves. No different from modern times when you look at a picture of your grand and great-grandparents, and then you may ask about them in order to understand something about yourself. Nevertheless, these ancient deities did exist. We, the ancient Egyptians, called our sun deity Re, as in the rays of the sun, which means the seer, for he was the deity who sees all. In fact, his symbol is the sun, which is the fire of nature. This deity Re, like the sun, had many forms and many names, such as Atum-Re, Atun-Re, and Amun-Re. The most important of his name was Re-Har-Arketi, who was shown in Egyptian art as a falcon-headed deity wearing a solar disk, a symbol of the sun, and a rearing cobra. Harakati was a particular manifestation of Har, that of Horus of the horizon, the birthplace of the sun. But do know that Re was also an actual person who had a wife named Ret, and they were the parents of Shu and Tefnut. Anubu, another one of our deities, also known as Anubis, is represented by a man wearing a black jackal mask. A jackal is a dog, and if you spell the word dog backwards, you get the word God. Anubu is the god of the dead who is over funerary rites. It is no coincidence that some people believe that a howling dog is a death omen. When you apply this principle to modern-day monotheistic religions such as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, it relates to mental death. For each of these religions base their belief on dying first in order to meet their ghost god in a place in the sky called heaven. Nevertheless, Anubu was an actual person. And last but not least, Tahuti, another one of our deities, is the messenger of the Neteru and the personification of divine intellect, thus the patron of learning and literature. He is represented as a man with the head of an ibis bird, which is often crowned by a crescent. This is letting you know that he is a lunar deity, walking with man, although resistance impedes development during the end of a moon cycle, under the sun, Re, symbolic of bringing in the sun cycle. And yes, he also was an actual person who existed. So, as you can plainly see from these few examples, all of our great ancestors were human beings, not statues, not animals, not myths, and definitely not just principles. They were human beings that lived, that walked, that talked, that laughed, that cried, that loved, that hate, that hungered, that thirst, that was born, that gave birth, and then passed on to higher states of existence. So, are you ready to adjust to truth, or are you too accustomed to lies? I'm Kef Ray, and this is Back to the Basic. Like, share, and subscribe. Facts restated. You wanna know something? Go back to basics. Mozart trapping was called the Matrix. The world civilized, yet it's hard to face it. So I spread truth, hope you embrace it. Watch, like, share, bring in awareness.